that there is a good piece of news for everybody to share. That is, we have ultimately succeeded in buying a very well situated piece of land for European mission near London. It's about 33 miles from here in Surrey. The piece of land is very well positioned, and the dimensions are also very suitable. In one particular area there is room for 80,000 people for the Salana of Europe. They can stay together. And there are quite a few buildings there already. It was originally built for the purpose of accommodating migrants from Eastern Europe. During the World War, was it? After the Second World War, some migrants were accommodated. And the buildings are so capacious that they can accommodate at least 2 people, and plus some. If the halls are converted for accommodation, temporary arrangement can be made, then about 600 to 800 people can be accommodated in that area. There are 80 wash basins and plenty of room for quite a few facilities for toilets and bathing, etc. And there is also a little swimming pool, which it's only in name. It's in rotten state, also very small, too small, permanent fence in fact. But anyway, that's an additional thing. If your small children go there for picnic, they can enjoy that swimming pool. I have told Khudam Al-Anbiya and Sarullah, have you conveyed the message? And Lajna Maullah to open their offices there, choose their own places and renovate them and have picnics there and some other small activities. And I plan to hold a get-together of the British Ahmadiyya community. Whoever can afford to come, you will be most welcome. So you should bring your own food along, and we'll enjoy Kulu Jamia. Everybody will bring his own dish and bread, and then we'll mix it up and eat together. No cooking there. The utensils should also be disposable. And I think it would be a good enjoyment. Also we'll say our prayers together there, and we can hold some, unofficial tournament. Our mom and children is there. So that day is to be fixed after consultation with Amir and the national president. So you kind of find about it. So that is all there is to it. So tonight you should pray particularly for the success of this center. And also I have in mind trying first to, I'll have to take permission, and we'll have to try to get permission for creating a sort of resort place as I saw in Germany, in Hamburg. Your brother-in-law, Sharif Khalid or Khalid Sharif?
Sharif Khalid.
Sharif Khalid. But the reason was he always used to call him Khalid Sharif. That is why I also mixed it up. So Mr. Sharif Khalid or Khalid Sharif, he got a very beautiful tiny cottage in that area. It is situated right in the middle of the town. And the government provides that space for everybody to hire for a while. The condition is that you have to build your own cottage cottage out of timber and have a little small vegetable garden and fruit, not fruit, fruit also I think, small trees and flowers and so on. So it's a beautiful area altogether, very well decorated, and people, instead of going out of town to spend their weekends, they go to this small village of theirs and enjoy their weekend. It's also a very healthy activity because during the 2 days of occupation there, they mostly are involved in so much work in renovation, in gardening and things. So it is a very healthy activity and pastime for the whole family. So if the government permits us, and apparently there is no reason why they shouldn't, because the recreation and community activities are included in the permission, then we could allot you small plots for you to build. And as far as the timber goes, we can demolish some of the buildings or permit them to be demolished piece by piece. People can go and work there and take out their timber, the required amount of timber, and rebuild it into small cottages. So it will be overall a good activity for the whole community. They will remain involved. So I hope, inshallah, offices will also be established there. Particularly, we need a lot of place for publication now. Lakhs of people are going to be providing literature from England, and the literature is already being published, and the addresses are being computerized. But unfortunately, the British and their community has not yet provided with enough addresses. None of
Pakistan, we will get a lot of addresses recently in the last 2 years.
From everywhere except UK. I think they think there's quite enough time here. Nothing else is required now. But more is required, in fact, while I'm here. More activity should be witnessed. Last time when I mentioned about the preaching lag in this country, since then I have started receiving very encouraging letters. People immediately went into preaching. So they only need reminding, that's all. So better do it. You are not, this is why I left you alone without any central duty, so that you could go on looking after the affairs of the country. But somehow you remain involved in 5 times prayer, and that's all. You should pay proper attention to these instructions, which are carried out everywhere in the world except here. And now, any questions, please? Yes. 2 or 3 plots are already bought, whether in the big form or already at their built or taken possession. There are, you better note down the names. One is ex-lieutenant Captain Bashir, and he kept the 2 plots. Another was So anyone also thinks to love the national objective, how to go about it, what the commission says, what should be the charge and so on. So they also look at the commission procedures for this, and also after inspecting the place on the spot, find out which place is suitable for this activity. And read as temporary community activity, I don't think there will be any objection. But anyway, permission should be sought, regular permission, after making the entire plan.
It's not a question, Hazur, but I first heard news about this acquisition of this property on TV this at what person?
Which TV?
ITV News. They said a Muslim community has acquired property worth about $500,000. And as a matter of fact, the property was exhibited on behalf of the London Jamaat, men, women and children, I wish to congratulate you, sir.
But already I have spoken more over you. I have not really spoken you already. Thank you. Send this kettle off to Rabba so that they could also share the pleasure, and tell them to sacrifice goats as required, as they think is necessary, and also distribute sweets among the poor children. And also some sweets should be distributed to them al-Waqfin and Ibn Hibayr, a kilo each to their houses. Any questions now?
In Surah Maryam, Hazrat Zakaria is told that
Zakaria
is
what did you say? Where did you say after him? Hazrat Zakaria
is told that
and you also said something. What was the prayer? What was it?
La takallamu.
No. Hazrat Zakaria what?
Hazrat Zakaria was told that
Alayhi salam.
Allah
Not alayhi salam, but alayhi salam. Be very careful about these reflections, because this alayhi salam means she was a lady. Alayhi salam means he was a man. So a slight reflection makes a lot of difference in Arabic. Be careful when you mention the name of the Prophet. Say sometimes people say Hazrat Aisha Siddiqa anhu, which means that they refer to her as a man. Ho is for men. While ladies are mentioned, you should say Raziyallahu ta'ala anha. While men are mentioned, you should say anho. You understand?
yes. It is said that La takallamu nasa salasa layal sawiya.
La
Takallamu nasa salasa layal sawiya.
That's a singular. Again, I think you are making some mistake in this recitation of the Quran. Takallamu is for the plural. While it was singular when Allah was addressing only Hazrat Zakaria, not all the rest. La takallam or takallamin nas hoga. Exactly what is? I don't remember this verse.
Tatakallaman nas.
The T is sometimes dropped, but I don't know. This is why I am not sure. Any Hafiz who remembers this verse?
Is Holy Quran.
Okay, find out. It is in Surah Maryam.
Yes.
Read, you always better read, write it down and then read it. Because one should be very careful about the recitation of the Holy Quran. Sometimes people make mistakes, there is no doubt, but unintentional, very rare mistakes can be pardoned, can be overlooked. But the normal habit should be to be very careful. It is in the beginning.
Yes.
In the first or second ruku, I suppose.
Qala ayatuka Allah tukallimu. That's an asa salasa layalin sawiya.
That is not an order, that is an order in future tense. You will not speak. Allah tukallima, that you will not speak to people. That is your sign. So
Its translation is thy token is that thou shalt not speak to anyone for 3 full days and nights. The word here, layalin, And what does it mean that this was only nights, or just is it translated whole day and nights? And what's the significance here?
In fact, layalin is also used like days in Urdu. When you say for 3 days, that means that nights are also included. They are sandwiched between days. So the Arabs also speak of nights instead of days. They don't have to mention the days along with the nights. When 3 nights are mentioned, 3 days automatically are included. But why special stress is laid in the Holy Quran on the layal, nights rather than days, is because Hazrat Zakaria used to pray almost all night, particularly during those days. And because they were very special days of offering prayer, so the more important time for him was nights rather than days. But what is the question? Not this, I suppose, because you are not satisfied.
My question was this, that why is mentioned night? Either he was not speak only the night time, or during the...
This is what I am telling you. That either days or nights could be mentioned having the same meaning. A period of 3 days and 3 nights. Understand this?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Arabs speak of 3 nights together or 3 days together equally. It doesn't make any difference. Both mean a period containing nights along with the days which are covered during that period of nights. So you could say either way. You understand this point?
Yes. Now I understand, but previously I was saying that it should be Nahar or Yom.
I'm coming to this. Why Allah chose nights at this particular occasion was because as far as Hazrat Zakaria was concerned, nights during that period were much more important to him, because it was more often than not during the nights that Hazrat Zakaria would stand before his Allah in worship. And the time importance is measured by the usage of time, not by the passage of time. The time which is employed in better occupation becomes more important. The time which is employed in lesser occupation is less important. This is why Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is addressed, Inna laka fin nahar sabhun tawila, that during the day you are so busy, you are so occupied that you have to perform so many duties. So nights are free for you to stand before me and worship me. So he was waiting all the day for the nights to come. So for a person whose heart is in the nights, yet he has to perform other duties in the day, nights are of much more importance than the days. It applies to the ordinary people of the world as well. Those people in Europe, for instance, who have to go dancing to the dancing clubs and spend the night dancing and reveling, the whole day they will be waiting for that time. The day is not only unimportant for them, and it rather becomes boring. They have to hurry through things so that ultimately the night of reveling comes. So for the prophets, also the nights are important, but in a completely different manner. Not for the sake of the world, but for the sake of Allah. So they were very special nights of prayers. So instead of saying days, Allah has chosen the nights as a measure of time.
So there's another question about this also, that in the other verses it is mentioned
our guest has come over there. Would you kindly come forward a little closer to us? When did you arrive? Just now?
Yes.
It's come and sit here.
Thank you.
Where will you take him? The lady who came with you.
She is resting.
He's resting.
Because we got lost.
Please.
In the verse 50, it is said that فَلَمَّا اعْتَزَلَهُمْ وَمَا يَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُ إِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ وَكُلٌّ جَعَلْنَا نَبِيًّا. Here the Ismail alayhi salam was the first son.
But that line is not mentioned here. Ishaq wa Yaqub. They are the two prophets mentioned. One is father and the other is the son. So because that particular line is mentioned, the brother has no place here. He would be out of context. The Holy Quran goes for the economy of words and sentences. When the Holy Quran chooses a particular subject with particular intention, it does not waste time or space for things which are irrelevant in that context. So the holy prophets and their lines are mentioned variously in various places according to the situation. For instance, when Hazrat Ismail and Hazrat Ibrahim are mentioned during the rebuilding of Kaaba, there is no mention of Hazrat Ishaq at all. So would you say that he didn't exist?
After 4 verses, then it is the mention of Hazrat Ismail.
Then because the subject changes from there, the second line begins. If you had written this book, Nauzubillah min Zalik, would you mention all of them together? Without any regard to the subject matter and the propriety?
I was thinking that this Ismail alayhi salam was the first son.
That is not the question at all. Every time must you stick to the chronology? Chronology is not always important. It is not a Mirasi who is declaring who came after him and who came after him. It is the holy book. It is the word of Allah. So Allah pays more attention to the subject matter than just mere chronology. And Allah is not bound, because the Holy Quran clearly lays down who was first. After that, it's not important that every time one is mentioned, the other should have been mentioned before him. If you conceive this plan of things, you will not find it in the Holy Quran, because it's not befitting of Allah to stick unnecessarily to the chronology. The only objection could be if you could, some non-Muslim could raise this, could point out that as if the Holy Quran does not know who was the first and who was the second. That if that objection could be raised, that would be valid. We are bound to answer that. But if the Holy Quran has laid it down very clearly, unambiguously, that Ismail was the first and Ishaq was the second. After that, every time they are mentioned, why must they be mentioned in the same order?
No.
That is what I can't see.
Just I want to know for my knowledge that
This is what I am telling you for your knowledge. Yes, please understand the philosophy. Whenever a repeated mention is made, chronology is not necessary. The subject matter becomes more important. So it's not only at this place. At many other places, chronology is completely ignored and prophets are mentioned in groups. And for some interpreters, it is very difficult to see why these groups are mentioned. Because apparently they see no resemblance between these various prophets which are mentioned together, out of all regard to chronology. So this is the style of the Holy Quran. You should, if you want to understand, you should first learn the style and kind of things, then concentrate upon finding out the reason why this particular style has been adopted in this particular context. But this is no place for giving full lectures on the exposition of the Holy Quran, because these verses should be treated independently in full sermons or in an address of, say, lasting about an hour or so. Otherwise, it will not be doing justice to this. This is why I have been repeatedly telling you that questions pertaining to Tafsir Quran as such should not be asked. Only some occasional problem which bothers someone can be asked, for which the short answer can suffice. But to expect me to start exposition of the Holy Quran at random, while I have not the Holy Quran before me, and turn this majlis, which is question answer session, into a different majlis altogether, this is not the correct approach. For instance, I should love to answer questions about the Holy Quran if some Orientalist, some non-Muslim, has raised objection against a particular verse or against the life of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, inferring wrongly from the Holy Quran and things. These are valid questions for such sessions. But to quote passages and expect me to start expounding on those passages, for that this is not the right forum.
Thank you very much.
In Quranic Kareem, Allah Ta'ala says, La tukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wus'aha. La tukallifu Allahu. But it doesn't say that. But it doesn't say that. La tukallifu Allahu. Sorry, please, I repeat this. Try your best to be very careful when you recite the Holy Quran. It is the word of Allah. You should pay proper respect to it. You should be prepared. If you don't remember, don't say it. Just mention that something is said of this nature and find out. Whenever I don't remember a verse, of course, sometimes even the Hafiz Quran don't remember the verse. I always try to take the safest course. I ask the audience, if they remember it, they should quote the verse as it is mentioned in the Holy Quran. But to take leisure with the Holy Quran and go on changing the verses, this is not permissible at all. Quranic says this, La yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wus'aha. And later God teaches us the prayer, Rabbana la tuhammilna ma la taqata lana. Is there any contradiction between this, the capacity and strength?
There is no contradiction. If that is the question, there is no contradiction. You know there is no contradiction in the Holy Quran. But tell me what you want to find out.
I want to find out.
You should have said, apparently there is a contradiction. So kindly explain. That is what you want. On this I have already spoken at length in one of my sermons in Rabwa about a year and a half ago, that these two verses are not in contradiction to each other. They speak of different things and they make that subject very clear. La yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wus'aha, laha ma kasabat wa alayha ma kasabat. Rabbana la tu'akhidhna in nasina wa akhtana, Rabbana wa la tahmil alayna isran kama hamaltahu ala allazina min qablina, Rabbana wa la tuhammilna ma la taqata lana bih. This is not only this was explained in Rabwa, but also a full sermon on this was devoted in Karachi before my departure for Australian tour. I think just the khutbah before or the previous one, this was all spoken to at length. So you better refer to those khutbahs if you can get your hands to them. But in brief, I'll also explain the situation here. La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha speaks of the capacity which is known to Allah. And that capacity is the given capacity, which sometimes human beings waste and cannot fully employ. For instance, people become lazy and they become indolent, so much so that they don't know what real capacity they have. For instance, if you want to understand this phenomena, you can take two children of equal strength and equal physique. One is born in a very rich house and a very careless house, and the other is born in a poor, industrious house. Now the muscular development and the mental development, both, in the latter case, would be much sharper and much better, much more progressive than in the former case. There, a boy is treated so casually and with such fondling that he is not permitted to develop his capacity to the full, not even to the half sometimes, not even to 1/10. So we know of boys born in such families having grown up to 10 years or 12 years of age and still they cannot pronounce words properly. For instance, when during the Mughal Empire, it was who was the emperor who conquered Deccan? Aurangzeb went to conquer Deccan, that is the south of India, Hyderabad, Deccan, etc. And that expedition took so long that for years upon years the soldiers never returned home. And the children who were brought up in the absence of parents were fondled unnecessarily by the mothers, with the result that their bringing up was very, very poor by all standards. So once Aurangzeb sent a messenger home to find out what was happening to the families. So the answer which came was this, that all the children of yours had become valuelessly. So he was surprised that what this means, valuelessly, because it's neither an Arabic word nor an Urdu word nor a Hindi expression nor a Sanskrit expression. So he said, I don't understand what is valuelessly. What is valuelessly? Then the messenger told him that their pronunciation, because of the mother's fondling and unnecessary love, has become so completely distorted that one boy who was quite grown up, he was about 10 years old, I asked him to recite me a verse of the Holy Quran. So he said, yes, I know some Holy Quran, and he recited valuelessly. I was surprised, and then I realized that it was that was the verse which he was trying to recite. So he said, your whole generation has become valuelessly now. So when he heard this, he immediately ordered the entire army to march back and left the Deccan to the people of Deccan, or left some of his dukes there to govern. So this is sometimes what happens to the capacities bestowed by Allah. So when Allah takes reckoning of the people, He takes reckoning according to the capacities which were bestowed by Him. I mean, He's perfectly within His right of justice to do that. When you give something to somebody and then reckon what account He put them to, you have full right to count and say this is what was given by me and this is what the account you are giving back. But out of mercy, a worshipper is reminded to pray to Allah that be merciful to us. Don't put us to account according to what capacity you have given us, but in what capacity you find us today. However reduced that capacity be. So out of compassion and out of mercy, ignore our own wastefulness and don't load us with the capacity with which you know we have, and gradually build our capacity. That also happens in ordinary life, and I told the audience there that when you choose a worker, treat him alike, because you are expecting something from Allah. If you don't treat human beings and people under you in the same manner, you cannot expect the same treatment from your Lord. So be merciful to your subordinates, despite the fact that ultimately their capacity may be built to huge dimensions. To begin with, give them portions of work which they can easily perform. Gradually build their capacity to their ultimate limit. So this is the phenomena which has been mentioned in this apparent contradiction. La yukallifullahu nafsan is the rule applying to the capacities provided by Allah to a people. For instance, Ahmadis, and this I also mentioned, Ahmadis have been chosen to bring about the world revolution. Had there not been capacity among Ahmadis, the given capacity by Allah, He could not have chosen us for this task. So it's a glad tidings. Yet when we look at our own capacities, the work, the amount of work which we put in, we fall short of that task. So what is this difference? Where is it gone? If Allah then is firm in His reckoning of us and tell us that for 100 years you have been wasting your capacities, what would be the answer? The answer would be, Rabbana la tuhammilna ma la taqata lana bihi. All this we have wasted, but our present power is very limited. So forgive us and show mercy upon us, gradually build us to that capacity which we expect. But at present we find we are very weak people. So this is the humility which is taught by the Holy Quran, and if you adopt that attitude of humility to Allah, ultimately you are constantly reminded at the same time that your capacity in the eyes of Allah is very great. You must work hard to build up that capacity, and also pray to Allah to help you. In that respect, inshallah, you will become victorious, and the final promise will be fulfilled, which is mentioned immediately after this. That وَآتَنَا مَا وَعَدْتَنَا عَلَى رُسُلِكَ وَلَا تُخْزِنَا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. You have built us with promises, and those promises were given to all preceding prophets, that a time would come when Islam would become victorious over the rest of the religions. We are the people about whom the prophets have been speaking. And yet we find ourselves with such shortcomings that if you do not show mercy, it may happen that during the time of resurrection we'll be put to great shame before everybody. So look to your promise and not to your working capacity. Not the potential capacity, but the working capacity. Any other question, please? Siraj, have you heard from your cousin Siraj? Not yet? Have you written to him? You should have done it, because you also participated in his conversion in some way. You were so loving and kind to him, and that had its influence on his having got converted to Islam in Ahmadiyya. So you should have looked after him, write to him a loving letter, and always remain in touch with him. Right?
So, you know, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, used to step into the mosque with his right foot and he used to place his foot out of the shoe with his right foot.
He used to step into the mosque with his
right foot.
right foot first, like this.
And he used to
take out the left foot first.
Yeah, and then
and put the right foot in the right shoe first.
Yes. And what was that reason? Why?
I guess Islam. Islam is the only religion in the world, and I repeat, the only religion which has established specializations in daily life. This art of specialization was learned much later by human beings. But 1400 years ago, according to the teachings of the Holy Quran, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us specialization. For instance, there are two hands provided to you. You could use both of them for every task which comes your way, whether it is clean or filthy. Because man has to perform duties of all sorts. You have to bow down and take up your shoes, and some germs, infection may be attached to those shoes and be transferred to your hand and so on. And so many other tasks of cleaning yourself, cleaning your nose, rubbing your face and things. Many a task there is in daily life which has a comparatively filthy nature. And there is some task which you have to perform daily, which is of comparatively clean nature or requires more hygienic treatment. For instance, eating. For instance, shaking hands with others. For instance, touching the holy books and things. So the Holy Prophet of Islam has taught us specialization in that. He says, keep your right hand for all these tasks, which are good and clean, where higher hygienic standard is required. And devote your left hand for all things which are of soily nature or maybe even filthy, but perforce we have to perform those. So for these purposes, you keep your left hand, with the result that when a Muslim shakes hands with a non-Muslim, in reality he is offering peace to him. There is a 100% guarantee that he never cleaned his nose with that hand. He never touched his shoe with that hand. He never touched a filthy thing with that hand. Whenever he washed himself, he never applied that hand to washing either. So this is a part of Islam, both to the Muslims and the non-Muslims. You offer complete peace in every regard, physically as well. But when a non-Muslim shakes hands with you, it depends on the standard of his hygiene. In some European countries, in some classes, not in all, they are very clean. I agree. But their both hands are injudiciously used for everything. But in the lower strata of that society, I know, even in London, they are very filthy. Some of them are very filthy, very bad habits. And for every filth and dirt, they use both hands indiscriminately. With the result, when they shake hands with you, they may transfer some germ, some very filthy material, which is unseen, of course, by the eye, but the hand knows how to transfer it to others. So this is the specialization which is found in every department of Islam, in every way. So much so that when in the prayer of congregation in your family, a lady is to join you, it is told that she should stand on the left. If a man is to join you and you are leading the prayer, he should come to the right. And this specialization extends to every cultural activity as well. If you have a guest of honor, he should be made to sit on your right, because you always serve from the right, not from the left. And in everything good, right is preferred. In everything bad, left is perforce adopted. So this is the philosophy of specialization, which if you do not know, then it may look strange in details. Why right and why left? One is puzzled. One thinks that Islam is a religion of very small, minor, unnecessary interferences into life. It is not so. It's a philosophical religion which carries you further in human evolution.
A few years back, doctors did some experiments.
It will come forward question. You specialize in beginning to ask questions right from the start.
A few years back, doctors, you see, they tried to make some experiments towards the human nature, in what way he would turn. So they made experiment in dog, giving him some, whether he turns to the right or the left. It was found that predominantly 70% people turn to the right. So there has got to be some relation.
More interesting perhaps would be this scientific piece of information that in every atom, every electron has a spin, right spin or left spin. So in life, the choice of chemicals available to Allah was both. The right spin chemicals with the same qualities could also be used for building up life, and the left spin chemicals of exactly the same nature could also be used for building up life. So Allah chose the right spin. Why and how it happened, the scientists don't understand. But it did happen. That in the entire organic chemistry, the build-up of life, whether it is pertaining to animal kingdom or plant kingdom or bacterial kingdom, it is always the right spin chemicals, elements which are chosen. So the scientists have, from this study, the scientists have come out with an ingenious idea of providing the gourmets with such food that would not add an atom of weight to them, but they will be able to fully enjoy it thoroughly in every respect. For instance, sugar is the main problem. So they are artificially building the left spin sugar with chemicals. Carbon, hydrogen and oxygen are the same materials with which sugar is built. So if you choose the left spin carbon and left spin hydrogen and left spin oxygen for creating sugar, which would be exactly alike in everything to the sugar which is produced from sugarcane or other fruits, yet not an atom of it will be accepted by life. You'll enjoy the taste, it will enter your stomach, will pass out without having been absorbed, and as I told you, not a single atom would be accepted by life, because life is very choosy about this right movement. How it takes place, it is still puzzling and perplexing. But so far this sugar has not been made public because it's very expensive. Even perhaps the millionaires cannot afford eating this sugar at present, because it costs maybe 1 million pounds for a pound of sugar, because it is in experimental state. Synthesis of the whole carbon, hydrogen, oxygen with the left spin material and things the scientists have not yet succeeded in bringing it down to the ordinary level of crisis. So once they make a breakthrough, then you can have any amount of candy if you please. No botheration, no problem with your diabetes and things. Yes, please.
So, okay, after you, how one could manage if we step out first left and first put on the shoes right, if the floor is dusty or something like that. So I couldn't imagine.
This means that the mosque should be kept clean.
Here it is, but in Pakistan also.
They should also be kept clean. Any other question, please? Yes.
Hazur, during this discussion, Hazur has mentioned that if a man comes, he should stand on the right hand, and if a lady comes, he should stand on the left. What is the philosophy behind this?
This is exactly what I was trying to tell you. The specialization. But anyway, thank you so much for reminding me of a joke. Shall I relate that joke? It will be difficult for the English speaking to understand, but the Punjabi and Urdu speaking can enjoy it. You have heard the story of Joseph and Zuleika. How do you pronounce Zuleika in English? Anybody knows? How is Zuleika pronounced?
I heard that when they finished the story, he said that...
No. What I want to know is the English pronunciation of the word for Zuleika.
I know it's a joke, but my point is that...
You know the joke?
I know the joke.
Would you kindly come to the microphone and just tell the joke? Tell someone to share it with you. So, that means you don't want me to tell them either. Come to the microphone and then explain further what your question was.
But it's not, I was very attentive to what Hazur said, but I just wanted only a little clarification on this point only, what Hazur has said. But not on the whole. I understand, I was very attentive.
Specializations, you have to be arbitrary. There is no question of reason why. In specialization, you have to be arbitrary. For instance, there are doctors who are nose specialists of noses. They specialize. Previously, they used to be ENT, ear, nose, and throat. But now the specialization has advanced to a stage when there are doctors who specialize on throat, there are doctors who specialize on nose, and there are doctors who specialize on eyes. Ears as well. Of course, eyes, and ears there should be mentioned. So, there is again a joke about this as well. A lady was introduced at a dinner party to some doctor. It was said, Mr. Doctor so-and-so. And she said, what doctor? Trinity? He said, no, doctor of medicine. What branch of medicine? He said, he's a doctor of surgery, in fact. Which surgery? What specialization? The doctor of nose. Said, which nostril, please? So if the science of surgery advances to that stage, where really they begin to specialize on the right or left, how would they make the choice? Why should right be preferred to the left or left to the right? If somebody does, would you have the right to ask him this question? Why right? Why not left? Then there are equal chances in specialization where both sides can be equal. There is no answer to such a question. Why ladies are preferred on the left side and why men on the right side? It could be exactly the opposite. And the same question would be asked. Let's conceive that Rasulullah had fixed ladies to stand on the right side and men to the left. Will you not ask that question again? Tell me. Suppose this was the position. Will Mr. Bishni not ask that question?
So this is like that.
But you are very dejected about it. You are not happy. Still you are not happy with the situation, are you?
He has lost his questions. He has actually lost his questions.
No.
He has.
Yes? Very good question.
He has written, he has lost in the way.
Where are the questions you used to write and think about? Right. Now you understand my answer? When there is a choice, equal choice, in that case there is no reason why this question becomes invalid. Because had Rasulullah preferred the left foot or the left side for clean things and the right side for unclean things, it could be equally good. Why not? For instance, here in Europe, they eat with the left hand, don't they? They hold the fork in the left hand and they eat with the left hand. So left hand could equally be well used for eating if Rasulullah had advised us to do that. So the point is that when there are two choices of about equal nature and you have to divide things for the sake of specialization, so the choice may not have any reason. The choice more often than not is always, not always but more often, is arbitrary. So you don't have to provide a reason why this was taken and why not that. Now it's all right, huh? Now I see satisfaction on your face at last.
Ask my questions.
Yes, please. Everybody is in fact waiting for your question to come. But very little time is left now.
So let's start.
With a long answer, I suppose.
Short answer.
For the newcomer, let me tell them why I asked this question. You know, this gentleman is very popular here in this session for asking questions. So he specializes in this art. He generally introduces the style of his question as well sometimes. So the night before he said, I have two types of questions. Some which are rather longish questions, but with short answers. Some who are rather shortish questions, but with long answers. Which one would you prefer? So I'm referring to that. Please, any question you please, of your choice.
If one joins the last two rakats of the Zuhr prayers, has he to recite some verses also of the Quran, Holy Quran, in the two rakats he has to complete after the Imam has completed the prayer, or he should recite Surah Fatiha only in them?
The first suggestion is correct. He has to recite some verses of the Holy Quran along with Surah Fatiha. It is also of course a part of the Holy Quran. Other than Surah Fatiha, he should also recite some other verses from the Holy Quran in the first two rakat. Because the principle which I have many times enunciated, made clear to you, is this, that in the philosophy of congregational prayer, the leader dictates the terms. and those who follow, their intentions are subordinate to the intention of the leader. If the leader is saying the final 2 rakats of a prayer which has 4 rakats, the followers who came and joined later on and joined only the latter part or latter half of the prayer, their prayer would be in reverse order from then on. Their last 2 rakats would be performed behind the leader because he was performing the last 2. And the first 2 are left for him to complete later on. So whatever applies to the first 2 would apply to his first 2, which apparently would be after the 2 which he has performed. So although the order has changed, but the applications of rules does not change. He will say his prayers as if he had started it anew. After he is finished, the Imam has finished the prayer, he will get up and say the first 2 rakats as they are required to be said.
He will be completing 4 like that.
Like that. Not 4 after the Imam. Yes, please, 2 after.
4 including that those he has already said
yes.
after the Imam.
Those will be considered as the last 2, and the last 2 which he would be saying singly would be considered as first 2. They should be treated as first 2. Yes. Tonight, must he?
From the traditions that you said in your speech that there can be no prophet between Prophet Muhammad and but there is a tradition that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that if my son Ibrahim had lived, he would have been a prophet.
So anyway, you shouldn't have said that.
No, see, what I mean is that
what I mean to say, understand the point.
if there was no possibility.
No, there is not a question of possibility. There is a statement of facts. He was not speaking of possibilities at all. He was positively told by Allah that this is what was going to happen. So his information was based upon the information he had received from Allah. He was not speaking from himself. Because the Holy Quran categorically mentions this. لا ينطق عن الهوى إن هو إلا وحي ما ينطق عن الهوى إن هو إلا وحي. He does not speak from himself. Whatever he speaks is founded on revelation. So in this respect, the situation is that when Hazrat Ibrahim was born to him and died at an early age, he mentioned it as a potential. He said this boy had the potential of becoming a prophet, had he lived. So here he is talking only of potential. When he mentions that there will be no prophet between Masih Ma'ud and him, he is speaking of some positive piece of information he has received from Allah.
Yes.
Allah had told him so. Now if Hazrat Ibrahim were to live, he would definitely have become a prophet, but in that case, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam should not have told us what he told us otherwise. Then he should have told us that there would be only one prophet between me and Masih Maud, and that would be Ibrahim. So that lack of his mention also showed that it was decreed that Hazrat Ibrahim would not live long enough.
Yes, so what you're saying is that the Holy Prophet would not have, what he said was that God had told him that because of Ibrahim was going to die, as a fact, as a takdeer, there won't be any more prophets between you.
Exactly, he knew it already, that he was to die and he died, so Allah's decree was made manifestly clear to him. And as far as he was concerned, he died at an early age, which was not the age of the prophets. The prophets are made at the age of maturity, not in the childhood. So that was out of question. As far as the realities went, the facts of life, according to the information of Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which he had of course received from Allah, there was to appear no prophet between him and Hazrat Masih Maud, but prophet with full office and having the full name. As far as the status of prophethood was concerned, he mentioned that many a prophet may appear who would not be given the office of prophethood as such, but whose status in the eyes of Allah would be like the prophets of Israelites. That's another tradition. So that sort of prophets appeared in large numbers between him and Hazrat Masih Maud.
Can I just ask a little clarification?
After Mr. Habib Bhatt.
I got the same question,
Okay. Please.
I just want to ask, you have said that the right side is, everything you do is for the right side.
It's not everything.
No, but
everything which is clean and is not unhygienic, that should be performed with the right hand, and the rest of the task should be performed with the left hand. This is the general principle laid down.
Actually, the question Mr. Rashid asked, I just wanted to ask that.
But he asked, and he is finished with this question. Don't take it. Take the riddle up for him.
No, you see, what I understood was that the right side is the more superior side somehow.
Who told you this?
Well, then why is it that you enter the mosque with the right foot?
Huh?
So why do you enter the mosque with the right foot?
This is what I told you, it is specialization. When you specialize, fix one side for one thing and second, the other side for the other, then the questions of preferences are not asked. Then the practice makes that side either preferable or not in itself. But because of, for instance, the right hand is not preferable to the left as such. Only it is the usage which makes it either preferable or otherwise. The usage of right hand has been in Muslim society for all the clean things. So this is why this hand becomes preferable. But the side as such is not yet preferable. Because the decision was arbitrary in the first place. So why, in the British society, they begin with the left. So when I say as such, left or right is not preferable to the left, this is an explanation and an illustration to make myself clear. In this society, if you serve, you always serve with the left. So your guests of honor are always seated on the left side. Otherwise, their turn would come at the end. But in Islamic society, because of the preference of the right, the guests of honor are seated on the right side. So as such, neither right is preferable nor left. But in context of the British society, left is preferable. In the context of Islamic culture, right is preferable.
Yes.
Not by their own independent rights.
No. Why is it that the ladies have been on the left?
This is again the same question repeated by you. Suppose they were put to the right. Will you not ask that question? Why?
Is there hikmah or anything?
No, I'm telling you in the preference, two equal preferences. Two equal choices. Such a question is illogical. Either this or that. For instance, if there are two apples available to you of equal size and equal quality and equal color, and so that they are indistinguishable, you begin to eat one. Can it happen to you or no?
Yes.
With the intention of eating the other afterwards.
Yes.
Right? So why would you prefer that one first?
No,
Because first is first.
You have to take one in that case.
That is that.
The case that what
That is that exactly. Because if the important thing is specialization. If there were no specialization, sometimes ladies could come to the right and sometimes to the left. No problem. When a specialization is to be made, then a side for the ladies is to be fixed as against a side for the men. Now which side? Why?
Yes, sir, I think I understand. You mean the left hand or the right hand is it's got nothing to do with the ladies on the left.
Because if you put any preference to that, then from the lady's point of view, you are on the preferred side.
Yes.
You see? And from the man's point of view, the person standing on the right side of the Imam, he would be preferred on the preferred side, which is illogical. Because Imam is the one to be preferred, not the one who is following him. So it is categorically proved that here right and left do not speak of preferences. You follow this point now? Now I have cleared your point, and now again I see the shadows of doubt on the face of Mr. Bashir. So I hope I will get out of this, this center of
It is his own now.
So Mr. Sharifullah Bhatt, do you want to say something? No. You just raised your hand accidentally. Accidentally, yes. So shall we say the prayer now? Enough is enough? No?
The only thing the joke is that
No.
the joke is shared now.
All right. Yes, between the two. Good. So, what is the only thing? Tell me the only thing. You were just saying, the only thing is, when you were interrupted by Mr. Salim, what was the only thing you wanted to say?
Which one?
Just now.
Take the figure of speech.
When I said, no question, shall we say the prayer? You started saying something with the words, the only thing is, when you were...
The only thing I wanted to
Yes, that's right.
The question which was in my mind was in other people's mind also.
That's right, yes. So neither of you is to be preferred. Correct. Say the Adhan, please.